I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, kidnapped in 41, born in 39. My father's Edward VIII, who never married Wallace Simpson. She married a double. My father was always married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, school teacher from Madison, Wisconsin, baby sister to artist Georgia O'Keefe. My mom was Queen of England in 36. My father did not abdicate to marry Wallace Simpson. In 1937, she married a double, and that's when my Uncle George became the illegal George VI. Thus, Elizabeth has lived in all her finery and glory, and she's illegal. She's a war criminal. This is my Aunt Georgia O'Keefe. When they took out my father, and used a double, they had to do away with my mom. They did away with photos. They had her dying at a different time. My mom actually had a home out in Bel Air. And it's so odd. They had my mom dying at 84, and I was flown out to Larry Flynt's during a campaign in 1983, October, twice. So you get in such weird stuff and cover-ups. So, first of all, I want to read this. I haven't read it. An attorney, when I had to go to the woods at the National Forest and live to have a spot off the side of the road and subject to, okay, you can imagine. This was what she had. It just come out in the magazine, and I don't know which magazine this was. USA and World Today. U.S. News and World Report. Okay, sorry about how this is turned out. But this is Roosevelt Franklin. He's a cousin to Theodore, who was president. Now you got next to him is Elizabeth's mother, who is not the queen mom. Elizabeth's not the queen. This is, she's illegal. And this is Roosevelt's mom, who was such a little roustabout in the you could call it her castle in the White House. And then this is George, the illegal six, the brother to my father, who sold out to the Illuminati, helped take his brother down, King Edward VIII, with character assassination and lies, and a double that married Wallace, and then kidnapped his own niece, me. Wasn't enough to do all that to your brother there, fella? And then had a movie, The King's Speech. They've deleted any of the truth from history. This is Eleanor Roosevelt. These are Jews. And they helped take down my father and kidnap me. They were a part. There's one photo I put up where Wallace Simpson, in late 1941, she is shaking hands with Mrs. Roosevelt, like they're buddies, and well, I guess they were buddies in crime, because I'd been kidnapped earlier that year in the spring or summer of 41 and brought to Moulton, Alabama. So they were congratulating each other like, job well done. Roosevelt appointed Joe Kennedy ambassador to England, 36, till they kicked him out in 46. So his son, JFK, and the oldest one, Joe Jr., I think, the oldest one, flew into the embassy, 39 when I was born, and 41, at least JFK kept coming in, and he spoke before Parliament. Can you believe it? They pulled all this off, and nobody seems to care. They keep using my father's name in reference to Wallace Simpson, and what's bringing part of it back up is Meghan marrying Harry at Windsor Castle. But it's so horrifying to know that my father was married to my mom, still alive in 86. The double died in 72. And there was more than one double, by the way, that was used. But all the lies that have been told about my father, who stood up to the Illuminati and said, no, I won't take orders from you. He loves his country. And this is how history has rewarded him. Kidnapping his daughter, the torture to me and my sons, his grandsons, to his wife, my mom, Claudia O'Keefe, and to the British people. Now, I want to read this. I've never read it before. My attorney gave it to me. I can't get an attorney to sue for any of this, but they had me living in the national forest out here, freezing, starving, and all that. And my attorney handed me this. They did have an attorney, but she represented the federal government, so it's also hysterical that it's ludicrous. Just like the FBI agent said, they made it so ludicrous. Everybody knows you're telling the truth, but it gives them a chance to help you walk away. So it's got here King's Council, Britain's George VI. Of course, they delete the fact that he's illegal, and his queen visit Hyde Park in 1939. That's when I'm born. They're planning my kidnapping. At the center is Sarah Roosevelt, mother of the president. Oh, whoopee. I don't have the first page of this. I wish I don't know if somebody took it or what. But jumping, I'll just start where it starts. You're jumping. FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, dropped the roost for only one group. Military amputee wards were filled with men brooding about what fate had done to their families. A high official sometimes came calling. The severely wounded GIs recognized the visitor immediately. No face was more famous, and his arrival brought an exhilarating revelation. Down the aisle came the nemesis of Hitler and Hito, his wheelchair in full view and looking like a royal chariot, the mainspring of his mind. When the royal monarch visited America in 1939, Franklin Roosevelt greeted him with unaccustomed familiarity. He served him hot dogs at Hyde Park picnic and addressed him not as Your Majesty, but as George. Why don't my ministers talk to me as the president did tonight? An enchanted George VI remarked to a member of his entourage. I felt exactly as though a father were giving me his most careful and wise advice. I could go on, but it's the same crap. They're a bunch of thugs and they've gotten away with it. What can I say? I wanted to read this. I don't think I've ever put it on here other than showing the picture and everything. It's what Mr. Flynt said to me when I was out there in the campaign in October of 83 to replace Congressman Dr. Larry McDonald, that I had written about in the medical malpractice book that involved mind control. So, and Mr. Flynt had been shot by a program shooter. But anyway, and obviously I didn't get the book published. They almost killed me, and it's just an ongoing horror story. But I'm going to read it because when he sent the limo driver after me, the limo driver picked me up. I'm standing at the airport, been flown from Atlanta, not a penny in my pocket. I thought when I get there, he had called me, Mr. Flynt had. And when I got off the plane, I thought, my God, what if I'm stranded here? I don't have a penny or anything. Well, the limo driver came up, and he was a black man, and he had a big sign with Mrs. on it. He came up to me and said, are you Mrs. Childers? Well, I can't use my real name. That's the name I use. I said, yes. He said, Larry Flynt they were the best of friends. He said he always used my limo service. He said, I have not been able to get through to him since he was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia. He says, I can't get through to him. He said, why they call me to pick you up tonight, I do not know. He said, but would you please give him my card? So when I got there and went in to meet Mr. Flynt, I knew his shooting was a program shooting. It was done in the patterns I spoke about. The first thing he said to me is, you don't have to tell me anything about yourself. I already know everything there is to know. And I know they were going to send you back a vegetable. At that time, it was a few months or a month later, I started learning of my kidnapping and my real name. And my father's Edward VIII, who married Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, not Wallace Simpson. Whole thing was a lie. Elizabeth is a liar. She's always known it and kept quiet. And this is Georgia O'Keefe, my aunt. They kind of did away with my mom's pictures and everything, too. Claudia Ruth, she was a school teacher. So anyway, I'm going to jump from there. I met Mr. Flynt, and he was very nice to talk to, easy to talk to. I'd never met him. I just knew that his shooting was done in patterns. In its 10-year history, Hustler has never endorsed a presidential candidate. I am going to break that tradition by endorsing Peggy Childers for the Democratic presidential. Well, I'm not a Democrat now. I don't know that I ever was. Oh my God. Presidential nomination. I know Ms. Childers personally. I supported her for the Congress when she sought Larry McDonald's seat in the 7th U.S. Congressional District of Georgia. Peggy is an honest and means well in all her endeavors. She knows more about the political system in this country and how it works. But with your help, love, and support, she can pull it all off. He said little about it. Well, if you read these YouTubes and everything, I pretty much know all of it. But with your help, love, and support, she'll pull it off. Peggy is a fierce and tireless campaigner who works day and night, and she has no money. Well, you got that right. You got it all right. Or assets, but she has a lot of heart and courage. He's got all that right. Above all, Peggy knows how corrupt our political system is, especially those rotten assholes in Georgia who was responsible for my shooting October the 6th of 1978. The likes of Al Burris, Larry McDonald, that was a congressman doctor, and Georgia State Senator Thomas Murphy, and Culver Kidd, better known as the cover-up kid. Peggy was defeated in her October 83 congressional bid because she was an unknown 20-1 shot. But there is no doubt in my mind that she can win the Democratic primaries. This was back then. Well, I'm not a Democrat, believe me. If she will take her campaign seriously and listen to my advice. I can only think of one problem with Peggy. She is a Puritan about sex and has a lot of hang-ups. Well, so what some people call hang-ups, I call, that's the way I am, I believe. I'm conservative. I don't have to. I've had a lot of hell done to me, but doesn't mean I like any of it. And I am a Puritan about sex. Thank you. He said that in here. Okay. I listened the first, I refused, no, here's what it says. This was evident when she refused to watch as I screened the first Hustler video magazine in the library of my Bel Air home, California home. I had flown Peggy out at that time to interview her about a political corruption in the state of Georgia. Her motive for coming was quite different, though. She was seeking support to run against Kathy McDonald in the special election to fill Larry McDonald's seat in the House of Representatives. I endorsed and supported Peggy for that race. And this is getting pretty worn out, isn't it? As a result, Kathy McDonald, Larry McDonald's widow, was defeated. Even though Peggy didn't win, there was a silver lining. Kathy McDonald's manager, Tommy Tolles, told me that Childers' candidate that Childers cost his candidate, Kathy McDonald, the election. So if nothing else, maybe it's all torn up. My goodness, I should have copied more. I guess I've used this to support what I'm saying all these years. Liberal Democrat like Childers could keep fascists like Walter Mondale and John Glenn from winning the Democratic presidential nomination. I assure you I would have a lot more trouble defeating someone like Peggy Childers than I would the Democrats in the race. My atheist friends have a saying, scratch a liberal's skin and you'll find something underneath it. It's torn up now. I couldn't agree more. The likes of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan can't see me at all, but I can see right through these guys like U.S. Senator Alan Cranston and Gary Hart. Who worry the hell out of me because they changed positions right in the middle of a sentence. Remember, my children, Jesus H. Christ, Esquire, made me a favorite son candidate, endorsing me in the January issue of Hustler. So, Hustler readers and the rest of America, if you are a true Democrat, well, you could change that to Republican now. Conservative, very, very, I always was, and vote for an honest president, vote for Peggy Childers. You are a Republican. Just remember that the public said, I quote him, Larry's my boy, and don't you forget it. Well, the publisher said, publisher said, that's torn up that, oh geez. And I quote him, Larry's my boy, and don't you forget it, and I'm not going to say that one. That word right there. My sons would beat me up if they're still alive, and I get lucky enough to see them again. Vote for me or burn in hell. Larry Flynt, co-publisher of Hustler magazine. I tell you what, I think you can read my mind.